The woman who had once owned the music world looked like she was afraid to sing again. Rihanna sat across from Jimmy Fallon in Studio 6B, her undeniable presence somehow muted, as if the confidence that had made her a global superstar was being overshadowed by something much more vulnerable. The artist who had redefined pop music now seemed to be questioning whether she still had the right to call herself a musician. Jimmy noticed it immediately. They'd been playing Creative Calling, a Tonight Show game where artists discussed their relationship with their craft and what drove them to create. For most guests, it was a chance to celebrate artistic passion and inspire others. For Rihanna, it had become something that looked increasingly like a confrontation with her deepest fears about relevance and worth. "Rihanna, here's a question everyone's dying to know," Jimmy had said with his usual warmth, though there was obvious anticipation in his voice. "It's been 6 years since your last album, but you've built an incredible business empire with Fenty. When you're ready to return to music, what do you think that's going to feel like?" The question should have been exciting for Rihanna. Here was a woman who had achieved success in multiple industries, who had proven her business acumen while maintaining her status as a cultural icon. This should have been a moment of triumphant anticipation. Instead, Jimmy watched as one of pop music's most confident performers began to quietly panic. "Jimmy," Rihanna said, her voice missing its usual commanding presence, "what if I'm not ready? What if I'm never ready? What if I've been away so long that I've forgotten how to be the artist everyone remembers?" The confession hung in the studio air like a secret that had been kept too long. The audience, expecting exciting talk about new music and creative projects, instead found themselves witnessing something much more vulnerable, their pop icon admitting she was terrified of her own talent. Jimmy felt his entertainment instincts immediately give way to concern. "Rihanna, what do you mean you've forgotten how to be an artist?" Rihanna looked down at her hands that had held countless microphones, signed countless autographs, created countless moments of magic. And when she looked back up, her eyes carried something that surprised everyone: doubt. "I mean, I've been focused on business for so long that I sometimes feel like I'm a different person," she said, her voice becoming smaller, more uncertain. "The Rihanna who made Umbrella and We Found Love. She feels like someone I used to know, not someone I still am." The cameras continued rolling, but everyone in Studio 6B understood they were witnessing something unprecedented. One of music's most successful artists questioning whether she still deserved her place in the industry she had helped define. Jimmy made a decision that would define this moment. He stood up from his desk and moved to sit directly next to Rihanna, sensing that this conversation required presence, not performance. "Tell me about that disconnect," Jimmy said gently. "For the past 6 years, I've been in boardrooms instead of recording studios," Rihanna admitted, her voice carrying a vulnerability no one had heard from her before. "I've been talking about profit margins instead of melodies, market research instead of emotions. I've been so focused on building businesses that I'm scared I've lost touch with the part of me that creates art." She paused, clearly accessing fears she'd been trying to ignore. "And the pressure is insane, Jimmy. Everyone's waiting for me to come back and top everything I've done before. They want the next the next cultural moment, but what if I don't have that in me anymore?" Jimmy leaned closer, sensing the depth of the creative crisis Rihanna was experiencing. "When was the last time you felt connected to music?" "That's the thing," Rihanna said, her voice cracking slightly. "I can't remember. I've been so busy being a CEO that I haven't just listened to music for pleasure in years. I haven't written a song just because I felt something. I haven't even sung in the shower without thinking about how it might sound on a recording." The audience was completely silent. many beginning to understand how success in one area could actually distance someone from their original passion. I'll give you an example, Rihanna continued, her voice growing more emotional. Last month, I was in my home studio, which I built but never use, and I tried to just mess around with some melodies. But I kept thinking, this isn't good enough. This won't chart. This won't satisfy people's expectations. She looked out at the audience. I realized I couldn't even play music without my brain immediately jumping to commercial considerations. The creative joy, the freedom, the spontaneity, it's all been replaced by business thinking. Jimmy felt his heart break for the woman sitting next to him. That must be terrifying for someone whose whole identity was built on creative expression. It is, Rihanna said, tears beginning to form in her eyes. Because what if I go back into the studio and I've lost it? What if the magic just isn't there anymore? What if 6 years of focusing on other things has killed the part of me that made people fall in love with my music in the first place? Jimmy was quiet for a moment, absorbing the weight of what Rihanna was sharing. Can I ask you something? Why did you start making music in the first place? Before the charts, before the success, before any of the business stuff? Rihanna looked genuinely surprised by the question. Because it felt like breathing, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And when you think about that feeling now, does it still exist somewhere in you? Rihanna paused, clearly searching inside herself for something she'd lost track of. I think so. Sometimes I'll hear a song on the radio and I'll get this feeling, this urge to respond to it, to build on it, to create something. But then I shut it down because I think, you're not ready yet. You need to have everything figured out first. What if you don't need to have everything figured out? Jimmy asked. What if music isn't about being ready? What if it's about being willing to be vulnerable again? For the first time in the conversation, Rihanna's eyes showed a flicker of something other than fear. I hadn't thought of it that way. Rihanna, Jimmy said, can I tell you what I think happened? I think you became so successful at business that you started applying business thinking to art. But art doesn't work like business. Art works like breathing. It's not about optimization or market research. It's about expression. Jimmy turned to address the audience. How many people in here fell in love with Rihanna's music not because it was perfectly calculated, but because it felt real and spontaneous? Hands shot up throughout the studio, and the applause was immediate and emotional. Jimmy turned back to Rihanna. You see that? They're not waiting for you to be perfect. They're waiting for you to be yourself again. Rihanna looked out at the response, and something in her expression began to shift. The fear was still there, but it was being joined by something else. Possibility. Can I try something? Rihanna said, addressing the cameras directly. Can I just be honest about where I am right now instead of pretending I have it all figured out? The studio fell completely silent, everyone understanding they were about to witness something unprecedented. I don't know when I'm coming back to music, Rihanna said, her voice steady but vulnerable. I don't know what it will sound like when I do. I don't know if it will live up to expectations, including my own. She paused, taking a deep breath. But I'm tired of being afraid of my own creativity. I'm tired of treating art like it's just another business venture. Music gave me everything I have, and I owe it to that gift, and to all of you, to at least try to find my way back to it. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. So I'm going to start small. I'm going to go back to just playing around, just exploring, just seeing what comes out when I stop trying to control everything. And maybe that leads to an album, and maybe it doesn't. But either way, I'm going to stop being afraid of being bad at the thing I used to be great at. The studio erupted in applause, but it wasn't typical celebrity applause. It was support, encouragement, the sound of people wanting to see someone they loved reconnect with their passion. How does it feel to say that out loud? Jimmy asked. Scary, Rihanna admitted honestly, but also freeing, like I just gave myself permission to be human again instead of a brand. Jimmy stood up and embraced Rihanna, not a show business hug, but a real moment of human encouragement. When they separated, he looked directly at her. Rihanna, thank you for showing us that it's okay to be afraid of the things we love. That courage isn't about not being scared, it's about creating anyway. Thank you for reminding me that evolution isn't failure, Rihanna replied. That maybe the person I am now can create something even more authentic than the person I was before. 6 months later, Rihanna began quietly working on music again, not for release or commercial purposes, but simply to reconnect with the creative process she had distanced herself from. She also started mentoring young artists about maintaining artistic integrity while building business success. The Tonight Show segment became one of the most viewed and shared pieces of content about creative blocks and artistic authenticity ever created. Music industry professionals credited Rihanna with starting important conversations about the pressure artists face to constantly top themselves. Jimmy said in later interviews that the conversation changed how he thought about creativity and pressure. Rihanna taught me that sometimes taking a break from your art isn't abandoning it. It's allowing yourself to grow into someone who can approach it differently. And Rihanna? She continued building her business empire while slowly, carefully, lovingly rebuilding her relationship with music. When she was ready, not when the world was ready, but when she was ready, she began creating again. The woman who had been afraid to sing again had found her voice in a different way, not in perfect melodies, but in perfect honesty about the messy, beautiful process of remaining creative in a world that demands perfection.